Good evening. Welcome to UPARS Los Angeles. My name is Steve Mehra. I am the section director for UPARS Los Angeles. We have some wonderful guests tonight from the UK and Ireland. I'm going to introduce them to you. Barry Fitzgerald, who is from Ireland. He's appeared on all 56 episodes of Ghost Hunters International. He's headed a team on the American NBC-owned Sci-Fi Network and explored a quandary of paranormal and supernatural phenomenon around the globe. He was recognized for his work in the paranormal world and received the award of Paranormal TV Personality of the Year in 2016 from PSW, based in the Netherlands. His natural progression led to the writing and publishing of books on the subjects within his field, such as The Complete Approach, The Influence, My Home is Haunted Now, Now What?, In the Midst of Gods, Banshee, which ought to be very interesting, Searching the Sidhe, and of course, Legend Seekers. An exciting new trilogy of fiction began in 2015, which includes the novels The Council of Three, The Malice of Darkness, and Fracture, which is released in March of 2017. That's Barry Fitzgerald. And he has a website, charmstealer.com. Next is Steve Mehra. Steve Mehra comes to us from the UK. He's the UK's most respected researcher in the realms of UFOs, the unexplained supernatural, with over 1,000 hours of mainstream alternative TV programming, such as Fright Nights, Origin Unknown, National Geographic's ParaNatural, National Geographic, Wild X-Files, Ghost Cases, Canada, The Richard and Judy Show, Revealing Secrets, Psychic Live Time, and Phenomenon Project, and many more. Steve Mehra is a head tutor of British investigators' training courses in anomalous phenomenon and UFOs. And by the way, he awarded me or gifted me a very, very nice training manual. This thing is very well done, professional. I hate to say it, but it makes MUFONs look terrible. So, got that in. Okay. So he is the CEO of Phenomenon Magazine. How many people get Phenomenon Magazine in their email each month or every other month? Nobody. So what you ought to do is give Steve your business card with your email on it. I'm sure he'd be happy to put you on the list. It's a phenomenal magazine. No pun intended. It's awesome. It is the world's largest free e-zine, distributed in 12 countries to over 1.8 million subscribers. It is really well done, guys. You'll love it. He's an accomplished author of several books, A through Z of the Unknown, Strange Happenings, Paranormal Insight, and co-author of the Rochdale Poltergeist. I know you guys, I could go on and on. This actually goes on for another page, but I'm just going to first of all, ask you guys to put your hands together for these guys. Came all the way from the UK and from Ireland to give you this presentation. Come on forward. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for Steve for having us. Just get all these wires untangled a little bit. Okay. Tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about just a section, because when we come to do these lectures, the problem that we have is how much we can really give out in the time we've got, considering the amounts of years we've been involved in this subject. I know myself and Barry have got over 30 years experience, 36 years for myself and 30 odd for Barry in this field. And in that time we learned so much. And to be honest, we've come full circle in this subject, and I'll tell you reasons why a little bit later. What we're going to be talking about is just a little bit of what we provided in our new training manual about the subject of UFOs. Where does it stand? Where are we? It's the 21st century, guys. Have we really come forward enough to find out exactly what's really going on with this subject? Where are they coming from? What did they want? And how did they do what they do? We feel that we've had a lot of hindrance in this subject over the years. Colourful stories without any evidence being provided. Fake news, deceit, lots of different things, which just really causes us problems when we really are trying to get to the crux of the matter about what this phenomenon really represents. So this little section is what is part of the course that we've covered, which is referred to as Project Doorway, and some of the aspects of the investigation process. I'm going to start off with three basic principles here. That UFOs constitute an age-old phenomenon. We know that through the evidence that we have now that this is not a new phenomenon. It did not start with the flying saucer era. Be honest, guys, it's probably been going on since it probably predates historical documentation. So this goes on for a long, long, long time. And that the subject of UFOs does encompass the paranormal and the metaphysical. We're going to prove that to you tonight. And that the phenomena employs many elements of deceptive behaviour. And it is. This phenomena is very deceptive. Where we are today regarding UFO sightings, we tend to just get some of reports coming into us of landings and documents that we get from the government, alien abduction stories, videos and photographs. But for most, that's what ufology really consists of. But actually, it does consist of much, much more. The problems that we have in this subject is the fact is that we've created these boxes. And this is the trouble with this subject, because I've talked to many ufologists throughout the world, along with Barry has as well, and we find that there's ufologists that do not go into the realms of the paranormal. You've got guys that are out there in the paranormal field, not interested in the ufological. Then there's the metaphysical side of things, and the psychological, the parapsychological things that are involved. It becomes problematic because we created these boxes. If we need really to get rid of the boxes, and what we refer it to is phenomenology. It's the study of what it really encompasses without having to create boxes and fields to fall into. Arthur C. Clarke once mentioned, any sufficient advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and that is absolutely true. And we found references. During the 1970s, the release of official CIA documents, we were coming up with certain references pertaining to the establishment's investigation of the UFO phenomena. We found this reference, WFM. And to be honest with you, I mean, most of the researchers were looking around kind of thinking, what was WFM? Was it some type of secret facility? Was it some type of program? Was it an establishment? We really didn't know. It took many, many years before we realised that what actually WFM meant. And that was simply because of whistleblowers that worked at the CIA had come forward and said, oh, we can tell you what WFM was. And this is references backwards and forwards throughout the establishment in regarding their study of the UFO phenomena. It actually meant weird, friggy magic. Because the physics that's involved with this subject, they just couldn't get their heads around. It doesn't fall into the physics that we know and that we've come to rely upon. In a study of researchers at the Weizmann Institute of Science conducted a highly controlled experiment demonstrating how a beam of electrons are affected by a simple act of being observed. Some of us may have already heard of the double slit experiment or the dual slit experiment. It proves the fact that when we are actually observing something, it changes. There are differences that are happening when we observe. We found this time and time again. There's still research going in this field. It's a very grey area, excuse the pun. But the observer effect, and this is what is very important, especially when it comes to the UFO phenomena. In the heading of quantum theory demonstrates observational affects reality. It does. Observation of this phenomena also affects of how it acts. Communication between phenomena and observer, such as research into artificial intelligence, estimates human beings will have the ability to be linked collectively by 2050. This is what scientists are saying, that we're going to be able to link to each other consciously by at least 2050. Now, this was a real study that took place not long back, and the results were absolutely amazing. In recent experiments, people in India said hello to 3 other people in France. The greetings were not spoken, typed, or text. This communication happened between the brains of the subject. What is that? It is telepathic communication. So when we hear about these stories about alien abductions or alien contact experiences, and they say the same thing we're always hearing, well, we didn't see them talk, but we heard them. That is telepathic communication. But are they really, is it really something which is extraterrestrial, or is it a source that's triggered within us? Do we have the capabilities already within us? And it's just something comes along and presses the right buttons for communication. Very possible. A lot of these things already lie within the human brain. The phenomena has a capability of interpreting observers' intentions. Now, we know this ourselves by going out in the field, and how many times has it been when We've only packed cameras away and then suddenly a phenomena takes place. It's as if they know that they didn't want to be filmed. It's the same in the paranormal field, poltergeist infestations. When we set up equipment, it's evasive to the cameras. You set it up that way, it happens over there. You put it over there, it happens over there. This happened at Skinwalker Ranch. And then what they really did, one guy thought, clever day, I'll put one over there and one over there. And what did it do? It pulled out the wires. This phenomena can be hyper-evasive if it wants to be, and it's intelligent. And they know if they want to be observed or photographed or filmed. We put our cameras away, sometimes these things show up. During the 1980s in the UK, when British pilots had the shoot-down order, and there was a shoot-down order given, you see a UFO, bring it down. Make sure that it's obviously not over a civilian location, but if it should have the opportunity to do so. What we were finding is that UFOs were conducting evasive manoeuvres just prior to the pilot pressing the locking button on for his weapons. It was as if whatever the phenomena represented, it knew what was going through the minds of the pilots prior to weapon lock. That is this observer connection, this conscious connection that we're hearing more and more often about through researchers' work. The phenomenon is capable of measuring the observer's intent. They know that we do not have the capabilities, the normal capabilities without technology, to see into the infrared or even the ultraviolet. On dual camera systems now, we can see that sometimes UFOs are being filmed and in normal mode, normal visual mode, they're not. Sometimes they're actually in infrared, that they're there, but sometimes we cannot see them. We also know that these UFOs are picked up on radar all the time. From civilian airports, we get hundreds of different reports worldwide from civilian airports under monitoring. We have these little scares, we've had them in the UK, we've had them around the world, of what others refer to as these drones. But nobody seems to know what these drones are, and they're not really drones. And you start actually researching, you're finding out that these things have got little engines on them, and they're flying around not like a drone. They're they're about the size of a drone, but they seem to be observing exactly what's going on at military and civilian airports. And we get plenty of these reports coming through.
Albuquerque, 71 Papa Golf.
Number 71 Papa Golf, go ahead.
And was there anybody above us that passed us like 30 seconds ago?
Number 71 Papa Golf, negative.
Okay. Something. A UFO. Yeah. I don't know what it was. It wasn't an airplane, but it passed us going the opposite direction.
Now, I absolutely guarantee that this happens every night of the week, every day of the year. We just don't hear about it. It's happening to civilian airports. They're just not pushing out our information anymore. You might get the odd pilot will come forward and say, I've seen a UFO, but when it comes to the bottom line is when your job's on the line and you don't want certain companies associated to pilots seeing UFOs, things are kept quiet. But these are happening on a regular basis worldwide, as well as civilian and military. Accuracy in regarding speed of movement of these objects. Well, it's very difficult. I mean, some UFOs have been recorded on radar showing speeds of 6,000 to 20,000 miles per hour. The problem is that they're not exactly accurately estimated. It's just mostly random guesses. Astronomers have claimed that they've monitored UFOs travelling at speeds of 11 miles per second. If you actually look at some of the NASA footage, taken from in near orbit, you'll actually find that some unidentified objects have even preceded that speed, have gone faster. So the actual speeds of these things are remarkable, to the point where are we actually being able to see them because of travelling so fast? So can we really trust our eyes when we see a UFO? Now, there's a number of things that come to mind, and when we conducted tests, these are the problems that we hit. There is something known as ocular reticence of the eye, and that basically means that anything that's around about 18 hertz, we're going to have trouble identifying what that object is. For many years, researchers were saying, well, you know, why have we got three witnesses? And we've got a witness that says it was red and it was round. This witness says that it was three white lights in a triangle, but yet they all saw the same thing. And what we're finding is that the likelihood is that it's due to the ocular resonance of what they're actually watching, and the light recognition. Now, the problem that goes with light recognition is that 17 milliseconds or round about that, you're going to be difficult to work out if it's red, if it's blue, if it's yellow. You're going to basically say it's a colour, but on camera might be completely something different. The camera is not the eye. We've always known that. This can vary, obviously, slightly in individuals, because we do, believe it or not, all perceive slightly differently. We know this through parapsychological and psychological studies, that every single person in this room, none of you are identical in regarding perception. We all slightly are different. And there are millions of different ways how people can perceive. What's also interesting is that infrasound, which is close to the ocular resonance of 18 hertz, infrasound's 18.98 hertz, which is not far off, has been referred to as the ghost or fear frequency in paranormal research. So that's an infrasound that's generated that creates fear, creates upset. And we've seen this a number of times. There actually has been equipment that's just actually produced that randomly. It could be a fan, it could be certain pieces of kitchen appliances. This is how it's found completely accidentally. It's known as the fear frequency. This is a demonstration of how most cameras work on a 24 frame rate. And it looks like the water's frozen. Now this is at 24 hertz. There's a sound generated at 24 hertz which passes through the water. And on a 24 frame camera, what you actually have is looks like the water's frozen, and in parts of that water is actually invisible. There's sections of that water that you cannot even see with the naked eye. You can see now he's gone to 23 hertz. The water looks to be going backwards. Again, this is just normal camera footage. Can we really trust what we're being filming? This is the problem. The eye and the filming is two completely different things. 25 hertz. Slows down in a falling motion. 24 freezes the water to the point where if you actually look further down, you'll actually see that the water is invisible in parts. There you go, you can see the water's invisible. There's just demonstrations to show that we have problems even filming phenomena because we don't know the frequency, we don't know the resonance, and sometimes what we actually film is not what we're actually seeing. We get pareidolia. We all see a picture of Christ. It is, in fact, a dog's bottom. It just goes to show that how people will naturally want to see certain things. There is pareidolia that's involved as well. Don't ask me. I've had some strange things I've investigated. Never come across the reasons why a guy would photograph that.
Now, a lot of folks possibly in this room and also around the United States have all been reporting hearing this unusual hum that comes through the ground. Some people will call it the Taos hum from New Mexico, but it's also happening all around the planet. In New Zealand, Australia, England, Wales, Copenhagen, of course, Denmark, but also in Ireland, we're also hearing it, especially down the west coast of Ireland. It's now grown to such a strength that we've now began just recently to hear it on the east coast as well. Now, for many, it sounds very much like a diesel engine, maybe several blocks away. You get a rise and fall, and sometimes day to day that will change. The vibration will change. What we tend to find is this vibration is very, very low. I've been able to record this vibration at around 48 hertz. Very, very low. But we're getting about, the numbers are coming in, it's about 4 in 10 people now around the planet are starting to hear this. And of course now we're struggling to understand, well, what exactly is it? Insects and birds can react differently when in the presence of infrasound. And I've been on a location, in fact, down in the Caribbean, where we were starting to get communication with a particular, I want to say, being within the forest, when suddenly all the insects stopped. And as this communication developed, Our bodies were reacting. We were understanding what we were getting, the information that was coming through, which we'll delve into later. And then suddenly the insects started. It was like a Mexican wave that was going around this valley as the crickets started, and it passed around the valley. And it became wave after wave after wave. Now, crickets, of course, can hear low vibrations. As we're walking past, our clothes can create this infrasound frequency that they can pick up on, and they'll stop. It's predatorial from their perspective. They don't want to be eaten. And they, of course, produce a high frequency as well that we can also hear. But infrasound is a key player within a lot of this particular phenomenon. And this is across the board. We're talking ufology, the paranormal. Cryptids, of course, is another one in which we have to understand the importance and significance of infrasound. Even Bigfoot is using frequencies which we know since the 1970s go beyond the range of the human voice. We understand that they're using frequencies which come below the voice and above the human voice. But when they are speaking to us directly, when we incur into their space, they narrow their band. So they speak to us in a frequency that we can understand, which sounds like chatter. But when they use the lower frequencies, this is traveling greater distances, and it also can create fear in us.
Sorry, go on. And of course, we do have the, well, I mentioned earlier about the 19 hertz, the fear frequency. We believe the UFOs are generating an infrasound. And if you cast your minds back to those that saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Spielberg's hit movie, there was that scene, and we see this in reports all the time, when suddenly everything goes very quiet. The crickets stop, insects stop, birds stop tweeting, and suddenly there's this, boom, this UFO experience. We believe these insects and birds are picking up the infrasound generated by the phenomena as it manifests, as it takes place. We also know that the 19 hertz is a fear frequency sometimes generated in people. They get the fight or fight situation. And, sorry, we'll just go back one. This particular sound you won't hear, but it is 19 hertz. But what people tend to generate, over a period of time, you'll start to feel anxious. You'll start to feel a little bit scared, vexation. It's running in the background. You can't really hear it. But over a period of time, this affects people. There is a common thread that runs through the paranormal and ufological. It's one and the same thing. We've had to do years and years of work to realise we're dealing with the same phenomena here. The Vril Society was founded, we've talked about the Vril Society, and it's always doom and gloom because it was from Germany and it was associated with the Nazis. However, it was actually the old German Society for Metaphysics, and in 1921 to explore the origins of the Aryan race. It was formed by a group of female psychic mediums who claimed to receive communications from the Aryan aliens. This is ET channeling. Now, I'll tell you now, being involved in such studies, we know that ET channeling is no different than spiritual seances. It's exactly the same thing. It's all the same thing. We also know about the symbolism. It's not so, the swastika was represented in many cultures. In fact, going right back into ancient times, Sumerian times even. And it's a very popular symbol. This common thread, though, that we talk about, just as UFOs can be seen to interpret and recognise our intentions, similar conclusions have been met in the paranormal field. Experiments carried out in instrumental transcommunication, that's a bit like electronic voice phenomena, EVP, we hear about, but instrumental transcommunication is really focusing on the study of utilising radios or different types of equipment to gain communication. And we've had this, we've seen this in action, to the point where, we I'll give you an example. We contacted one of the world's leading guys in EVP, and we sent him our work to him. And he wrote back and said, I can't hear any EVPs in there, not a class A, B or C. That's different grades of how good it is. He said, well, so we had to contact him and say, no, it's between this time and this time. And what it was is that he said he's just hearing somebody talk, and he said, no, that's the EVP. Because the person that was talking wasn't us. And you could not tell the difference between our voices and the EVP. It was that clear. It was as if someone was there. That's how these communications happen. Sometimes they come as direct voice phenomena straight out the air, usually above you for some strange reason. I don't know why. But can we really trust that what we're actually being told? What authenticity do we have? Should we take it at face value? Who are they? You know, are they telling us the truth? This is the problems that we have. We know that, yes, we are communicating with intelligent sources. Very clear vocal responses, proven, fact. But we do not know if the authenticity above them. We know through a set of experiments that took place in England, in Norfolk, known as the Skull experiments. Some of you may know about that.
I should probably just ask, how many people actually know of the Skull experiment in England?
There's a few hands up.
There's 4. Okay.
Yeah. It was a series of experiments, professional, scientifically conducted in England in regarding spiritual communication. And what we basically had was ET contact during seances. In fact, if you want to mention about Blue.
What we tended to see was this crossover of phenomena which we're very aware of within the Ufological Society and the paranormal aspects as well. Now, as the process continued, one particular being manifested in the room. Now, this is using the same process as what the Victorians have been using a seance and everything else to communicate with spirit. They were using the same thing to communicate with an alien entity. One being materialized, the one with the blue face on the bottom left. It materialized within the room. Now, that in itself is what we would identify as a grey. But what was exceptionally interesting and slightly perturbing is that the mediums who were using their guides to generate this particular field, to allow this process to happen, immediately shut the process down. Because they said they allowed one through, of which there were many. And they had not good intent. They did not have any love for the human race whatsoever. They allowed one through, and that was it. It materialized, and it even showed itself on that particular image there was taken from a video or a television screen, which was used within the seance room. But physically, it materialized in the basement of this place. And the medium's guides said, no more. And they immediately shut the process down. So there is that aspect. And again, we're back to the same situation of, well, what exactly are these? What are we communicating with? And why, if we're using the same communication to commune with spirit, that we're having the same results with aliens? Is it possible that we're looking at something under a different mask? Same phenomenon, a different mask?
As you see the 2 images to the right, the pink ones, these just on a canister of film. It wasn't placed in the camera, it was actually locked away inside a glass dome. And these are images that turned up on the unprocessed film, but were already on there. They are manifested somehow on there. And very unusual photographs. There were written information, there were photographs of individuals, there was these strange pyramid-type buildings, these balls, we don't know what those represent. But it's not the first time that something like this, a connection in regarding seances, professional work in seances, and ETs has happened. Alistair Crowley, which is an occultist from the UK you may have heard of many years ago, experienced and had an incident in 1918 when one of these guys turned up. Now, he was practicing in Egypt a new form of channeling, when this guy here, as you can see, which by all intents and purposes looks like a bit of a grey, very large bulbous head, called himself Lamb, And be honest with you, he kicked his butt. He absolutely did not. He found himself for the very first time in a situation that he had no control over, and was well out of his depth. And it was that incident that forced him to come back to England and leave that form of channeling behind. But we do know that there are people that can peer into the other side, just have glimpses, just got one foot in the door's a little bit open. It might have been happening since since we were children. But some people have that glimpse into the other side. We had two people, for instance, is Stella Lansing in 1961, was using a cinefilm camera. Very famous, this case, because scientists were called in to try and work out what's going on and how she's doing it. They couldn't work it out. But she was sat in a room, in a home, and suddenly she'd jump up and say, I've got to rush out, I've got to film now. This sensation of being pulled to the phenomenon. She'd go out there, she'd film, and over time she would actually get all sorts of things. Sometimes UFOs, sometimes images of people. We have two Indian-looking people here. One is taken by Stella Lansing, and the other one's taken during the skull experiment in England. We have no idea. On the other side, we have Dorothy Izai. Now, she was doing exactly the same thing in 1974. These women never knew of each other, using the same method, pulled to actually go out there and film at certain times and get UFOs, images, all sorts of things. Science cannot conclude how they managed to do this. The highly evasive actions, now probably a lot of us have heard about Skinwalker Ranch. The phenomenon is hypervasive there, hypervasive. The phenomenon applies to countermeasures. It was doing this for a long, long time. Countermeasures at Skinwalker Ranch, which is in Utah. This is an action, as we know, taken to account an offset or another one. As a general concept, it implies precision, and it is a technological or tactical solution. Where we're dealing with is very, very clever. The phenomenon was always one step ahead, and on occasion will be responsible for even physical destruction of camera systems used to visually monitor the ranch. Because it just knew that when you were trying to put out cameras to capture this phenomena, it was happening in different directions to somewhere, just as in Poltergeist phenomena, it always happens outside the camera. I've been involved in a number of these incidents, and it is very frustrating. Sometimes it subdues phenomena. But in this case, it got to the point where it just ripped out cameras. It just ripped them apart. It pulled out wiring. If it didn't want to be filmed, it wasn't going to be filmed.
The Skinwalker Ranch, of course, many of us in this room are probably well versed in the ranch itself and the phenomena. But one particular phenomena really stands out for us. And it's the fact of these bulls that were taken from the land. They disappeared, they couldn't find them, and lo and behold, just by sheer accident, they found them within the shipping container. Now, they seem to be under this unusual spell, if you like, that kept them calm. They were in there, they were very well kept in there. But there was no way on earth any individual could have got the four bulls in there. It was impossible. Even the cobwebs on the locks were not disturbed. That's why they never thought of looking in there initially. They thought it seemed bizarre. But when they finally opened the trailer, there were the four bulls. And the moment that they started making noise, the bulls seemed to come out of this spell that they were under. And they nearly destroyed the trailer. I certainly would not like to have been behind the bulls during that particular incident. But the strange rings of light, they were often seen to reveal another reality. And this was also something that I was also working with back in Ireland, when these doorways would open and there would be another landscape behind these openings that is not here in our reality. This was something else. Now, our mythology, our folklore would speak of something different. It would come under a different name. Again, we're back to the same phenomena, different mask.
Sorry, Robbie. in India, in incidents in the UK, we had an incident in 1977 where it involved cows, again cattle. A gentleman at Ripperston Farm was putting his cattle away at night, locked them up, and as he was walking back, you can see the actual image of the top left here of where he was placing the cattle, which was just at the back of his farmhouse. As he was walking back to the farmhouse, he heard his telephone ring. So he ran to the house, picked up the phone, and it was his neighbour 3 miles away saying, "Your cows are in my field." And he said, No, they're not. I've just locked them up for the night. He said, "No, they've got your markings on them that your cattle is in our field." And lo and behold, he goes back to look, and his cattle aren't there. And they were in this other farmer's field. He couldn't work out the fact is how suddenly, within seconds, his cattle disappear and turn up 3 miles away. But when you actually start to research this incident, you'll find that the Ripperston farm was plagued by UFO experiences, and also Men in Black apparently turned up, questioning one of the witnesses, and also strange beings which were also seen. At the time this incident actually happened with the cattle. So you see, there's a lot of qualities there which are very similar to the Skinwalker Ranch incidents that are taking place, and still currently are. So we know that there's a connection between the paranormal and ufological. We take, for an example, bedroom visitations. Both paranormal and incidents and alien abductions related shared exactly the same similarities. Should we say paralysis? We get the reports on the paranormal saying, "And a shadow was seen in my room, I was paralysed, I couldn't move, it came over, it pressed on my chest," and all those sort of things. We get exactly the same thing in the alien abduction phenomena. Instead of it being a black shadow, it's a small grey being. I'm suffering from paralysis, I can't move, these walk over to me, and so on and so forth. I don't think that is coincidence. There is no coincidence in this game that this phenomena is sharing the same qualities. There's also forms of the sleep paralysis that we often talk about. Parapsychologists often say it's all down to sleep paralysis. But this has been going back into thousands upon thousands of years. It's references to the accounts of paralysis, even when people aren't in positions of sleep, when they're actually sat behind the wheel of a car, walking down a road. What we don't tell you is those incidents are also happening where it doesn't and it cannot be sleep paralysis. We also know that what's basically happening is, during these incidents, is that with the sudden huge amount of fear is generated by this phenomena. You suddenly see this thing in your bedroom, people absolutely freaking out. People go absolutely, what's basically happening is suddenly fear takes them, they cannot move, it's complete dread. And of course what happens during that time of fear is that there's an acceleration of the immune system.
So, let's try and understand this particular moment that these things come forward to us, in whichever form they decide to depict themselves as. We are held down in the sanctity of our bedrooms. We can't move. Something is happening. How do we start to process this? Our bodies are the best tool that we have to understand this. A lot of people will say to me, "Barry, what's the best piece of equipment you use when you go out into the field?" Myself. I can have cameras, I can have all the best cameras in the world. They will not work for me the way that I need to understand the way this phenomena is coming to me. The best way that we can do that is through ourselves. Now, this is where it gets complicated. Because many people, for instance, within parapsychology, will meet up, say, in a fast food restaurant, and they'll have something to eat, and then they'll go out onto the field, and they'll try and conduct the research. The problem here is refined sugar. The refined sugar has a knock-on effect within us. That fight or flight, that system can be shut down by refined sugar. So therefore, you are going out into and placing yourself in a situation in which you can no longer tell the truth, or you can no longer detect the truth of what's being given to you. what we tend to find is that a lot of the entities that we face will present themselves as a little girl or a little child, and you feel sorry for it and everything else, and you try and open yourself up to this. That's the biggest mistake that we could make, because refined sugar shuts that ability down. Our skin accepts the information from the environment. It processes it, and we get this through the brain. That's how we are pulling this information in. Through biofeedback experiments, we were able to understand that, and one particular experiment that I'm aware of went down wonderfully well. There was a computer program that was being run, and a selection of photographs were being taken during this experiment. The computer was selecting the photographs. These photographs were of kittens, of children playing, all happy pictures. Our skin resistance begins to fall over a matter of time because we're seeing something that we like. Our skin resistance begins to lower. Now, the computer then randomly selected one particular photograph, which was of a very horrific car accident. Disturbing. And immediately on seeing it, our skin resistance goes back up. Our body prepares itself to fight or flight, to run or fight. But what we noticed is that during the experiment, as it continued, the body began reacting milliseconds before the computer selected the photograph. That means that we were starting to detect something that hadn't even happened. Refined sugar will shut that down. 75% of houses are sold on feeling. Real estate agents will know that. What is this feeling that when we walk into a property, oh, I like this, even though there's nothing visually that would stimulate that? What is that we do, that we say, oh, well, I like this feeling. Yes, this is nice. We'll buy this. Or we could go into a property and we say, no, I don't like this. Many of us have walked into a situation where our friends or family members have been arguing, and we walk into something and go, ooh. We know there's something within the air, but we just don't know how we're pulling that information. This is how we are doing it. We are able to pull that information in. And if we blind ourselves by refined sugar, that being one of the main culprits, then we are limiting ourselves. And this is not only for parapsychology, it's also for ufology, because when you're going out into the field to do the sky watches and everything else, you need to be aware of what you're dealing with. You need to understand that there is an element of deceit within this that we have to recognize. We cannot accept the first thing that comes along. That always ends up in trouble. Now, what tends to happen when these beings materialize, it targets the T4 in the spine. This is the component in the spine that stops movement. You cannot move your hands or limbs, but the breathing and the eyes remain on a different circuit. You're still able to see it, and it still generates one hell of an amount of fear. And there's elements of that which we'll not get into now, but that fear aspect relates directly back into the immune system, the production of this mucus from all the different areas. And I got to say, there was tremendous work that was done on this particular aspect by my wonderful wife sitting down the back, who I better mention because I'll never make it back to the hotel tonight. But she did tremendous work on the immune system and what they seem to be going after. And this itself would tend to indicate that they are having a situation with their immune system. This harvesting that seems to be going on is targeting our immune system. And it's something that they need from that for whatever reason, which is still to be determined. There's a lot of speculation out there. Oh, well, you know, there's all these talk of hybrids and everything else, and all these different types of entities that are coming forward that need an immune system that will allow them to stay here longer. That, of course, is just pure theory. We don't know. But what we know from the facts is that they are targeting this immune system aspect, and they do that through the fear. and that is a key point. Sorry.
So as we know that, thanks for that, Barry. As we know, there's a closer relationship between the paranormal and ufological. Just as Spielberg put it in his movie, there was a specific scene from Close Encounters where the woman in the house trying to protect her child, and as these UFOs are descending to come and allegedly abduct her child, all hell breaks loose in the home. Appliances come on, hoovers come on, taps turn themselves on. Basically, it's a poltergeist disturbance that takes place during... People didn't really click that when they first saw the film, but it's a poltergeist disturbance that's taking place during a ufological event. Why did Spielberg put that into his movies? Because Spielberg took 87 cases and brought them into the film. Real-life cases. And he had 6 on his desk of poltergeist infestation at the time of UFO encounters. Now, if that's not a connection between those two types of phenomena, then we don't know what else is. But what gets really interesting is the fact is that phenomena can be conjured. We know this from experiments that took place, known as the Philip experiment, that took place in 1972 by a parapsychological study in Toronto. What basically happened is psychologists and parapsychologists got together to see if they could manufacture a ghost. When I say manufacture a ghost, in a particular home where there'd been no activity, they were going in there and they drew this ghost, they made him up, they worked out what he looked like, he gave him a bit of a history, where he came from, how he lived his life, and within a period of weeks, they brought this to life. They conjured this phenomenon into the physical world. He made him real. People were experiencing Philip, which was a manufactured ghost. So it goes to prove that sometimes some phenomena could even be conjured. Now I have to question, when you question the likes of CSETI 5, when you take 5 people out to a location, 5 meditators, and they sit there for 2 hours meditating, willing a UFO to come along, and all of a sudden, pow, there's your UFO experience. Now, I believe that this phenomena, be it the conjured phenomena, I think some of these UFOs as conjured phenomena, is no different than the real phenomena. In other words, these interact with belief, power. We can bring them into the physical world. We know these things exist in the physical world. What's stigmata? Well, parapsychologists have a professional name called self-induced spontaneous physical marking, SISPM. We know it works. We know it's real. You guys don't get to hear much of this sort of stuff, but we know that if you strongly believe in something, you can bring it into the physical world. People under hypnosis, 2-pence pieces placed on their arms, and we told them it was hot, and so the body blistered, because they believed it was. The belief in physical healing, faith healing, works. If you believe in it strongly enough, we can change the dynamics and the physical aspects of this world by belief. And belief is a very powerful thing. If you've got enough people believing that a UFO will appear, and they do, it's not necessarily that hey, presto, they've managed to pick the right area. I think some of this phenomena is actually being conjured, just as paranormal phenomena can be conjured. But it's all one of the same thing. The conjured phenomena, is a real phenomena. There's no difference. It's just that they're interacting with what we believe. We know from balls of light, might have been seen over Mexico City. Thousands or hundreds of them sometimes being recorded. We know the balls of light have been around during the Second World War, referred to as Foo Fighters. The 2 photographs to the right are balls of light which were filmed and seen by people in an office block run by the Ministry of Defence in the UK. The balls of light, round about the size of a football, were seen intelligently taking control and moving through doorways. It's one of the same phenomena. Also, we have John Keel. Now, John Keel was also mostly known for his investigation and research into the Mothman encounters, referred to the movie The Mothman Prophecies. And he wrote a very interesting book called The Eighth Tower. And after doing many investigations, he concluded that multiple types of entities were interacting with humankind, coming from numerous different realities, from which he called ultra-terrestrials. Modern day, we call them interdimensionals. Just a different, same thing. Now, when he wrote this book, people laughed at him. They thought, what? You know, these guys are coming from this planet out in space, and they're travelling they must have special engines on the craft, they're travelling all the way here. And he's shaking his head and saying, no, guys, it's not that. He got laughed out of town, basically. His theory was not accepted at all. Barry, would you like to cover that bit?
Now, through the work that we've been doing, what we started to see was that we were beginning to have manifestation through the spectral, what we would call the EMF and the electromagnetic frequencies of the visible frequencies. Now, what we were tended to find is that we were having positive encounters coming through the ultraviolet. But we were also having negative encounters coming through the infrared. That was interesting from our standpoint because if you have a haunted house, for instance, and it's having a terrible disturbance and an effect on the family, if you introduce an ultraviolet light, it immediately stops the activity. It creates a safe room in which it cannot manifest. But, and being one of those people who appeared in one of those shows where you run around with a night vision camera looking for ghosts, it never works. Because we discovered that the infrared light from the cameras was having an effect on the manifestation of the positive entities coming through. They were pulling back. It was reported that the light effect on the manifestation was almost like pouring acid on our skin. They were pulling back from that. But the problem that we were facing is that a lot, for instance, the seance rooms and things like that, the old Victorian seance rooms, where they were using a red light, red is closer to us than the violet. And the problem was that as we were communicating and getting the communication to come through to us, it was coming through faster through the red light. And that's where we needed to be clear-headed and understand that the negative aspect can come through quicker and reach us than the positive. And we live in a society now where we have to have everything now. We have to, I got it now, I've got a cell phone, I've got someone's calling me, give me communication now, and we take the first thing that comes along. We cannot do that anymore. We have to stop, we've got to be grounded, and we've got to understand what we are pulling forward and what is trying to reach us more so as well.
So we know that this phenomena is not something which is new. And we also know that it's an age-old, it's absolutely age-old, this phenomenon. There's enough research out there. Most of you guys may have looked into it. You look at the scriptures of Alexander the Great. He raided a city with 50-foot walls. How did he manage to do that? In the scriptures, 2 UFOs turn up, fire a pencil beam light down, and blow the wall, allowing him to raid that city and be advantageous. So the problem is that we have thousands of scriptures like this in history of UFO contact like this. It is not a new phenomenon. It dates back, as far as we know, probably predating historical information. We know this famous photo, or picture should we say, of the image. It's very well known. It's been over the internet. People know, see this object in the sky firing a pencil beam light down onto the forehead of Mary. The pineal gland of Mary, should we say. But what they don't tell you in this photograph is something very, very interesting, isn't it, Barry? What they're not telling you is regarding this character here, which is the angel, seen at the same time as a UFO in the sky, whispering into the Pope's ear. And he told the Pope to invade Constantinople. And the Pope did so. And that was 1204. That single whisper cost the lives of 380,000 individuals in Constantinople. There's always been this presence. There's always been this whisper. There's always been this manipulation. It's age-old and still continues today. Now, we start to get to the science side of some things. We want to throw a little bit of the science side. We don't want to throw too much in there because it gets very complicated. We may have heard of, in the paranormal field, of apportations. The apportation, an apport is a spontaneous arrival of an item from nowhere. Now, we've experienced this many times. I mean, sometimes, to the point where it's happened in our own homes. But on investigations, it could be as simple as you've got a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, you turn around and it's suddenly gone. It was there a second ago, and you're looking around, you don't know where it is. It turns up an hour later in the middle of the floor in the dining room or something really silly, in a silly place where you'd never put it. These are very resourceful. They don't waste action, so you're always going to find them somewhere where you just know it could not have been an accident. In this case, we were fortunate for it to take place during an investigation. So what's the difference between Mug A and Mug B? Well, Mug A is the apport. Mug A disappeared and turned up in another part of the house. We know that it was a set of 4 mugs that were purchased off the production line of ceramics. They were made in production line, packed as 4, shipped off for sale and purchased by this lady. So we obtained Mug A to take back for analysis, and we asked if we could have Mug B as well. Unfortunately, she lost 2 of her best mugs. But it was all in the name of science, and really, we have to question, is Mug A really Mug A? Is it? It's been assumed for a long, long time when these incidents happen, it's just moved from one place to the other. Well, it's not exactly that, to be honest with you. It would seem there is a significant difference with Mug A when it comes back. We know from testing that electromagnetics, it was slightly higher, it was 9.6 milligauss, the normal mug was 0.8. We know there was slight radiation level, 1.34 to 0.87, so it was slightly radioactive. Exactly the same, 319 grams, no difference in weight, and it disappeared for around about 96 minutes from what we know. Temperature slight difference, 21 degrees on arrival, 6 degrees normal on the other morgue. So it was slightly warm, so there was obviously a kinetic effect here on its appearance. The displacement, now I'll tell you what displacement is. We found this during poltergeist infestations. When objects are moved, we realise very quickly that the measurement taken, this is the displacement effect, where it was to where it was found, it can be measured, often with reoccurring numbers turned up. In other words, an item moved in the kitchen 47 centimetres, and then a brush in the bathroom moved 47 centimetres. There is a mechanism, there is an intelligence behind this. This is not random. And what we find under microscopy, this is what we've done. We've taken Mug A, we took samples from Mug A, put it under the microscope, and what we found was that it was not the same as Mug A when it left. A secondary dithermic reaction has taken place in Mug A. In other words, it's like it's taken apart, reheated, and put back together again. Mug A is not the same as Mug A on the return. We know that by these 2 images. Mug A to the left, we can see the more flattening. The ridges to mug on photo B is from the normal mug. We can see that it has, this flattened, what we can see imaging is that secondary dithermic reaction. So when we see dithermic reaction like this, we realise very quickly that plants which are affected in cases where UFO incidents have taken place are suffering from the dithermic reaction. Exactly the same thing. So the manifestation of a mug in a paranormal incident and the manifestation in a UFO, either be it in the sky or close to the ground, is using exactly the same principles of physics, creating a residue of this dithermic reaction. That is not coincidence. So the strangeness of the paranormal actions and the strangeness of the manifestations actions of UFOs are one and the same. UFOs been going on for such a long time. We know that obviously we've got thousands. When we get all the photographs now, it's usually just another stone to the mountain we already have nowadays. But it goes to show that phenomena has not changed at all. This image to the top left was taken in Southport in the 1990s, 1998 actually, and it travelled on its side at 90 degrees. It is, by all intents and purposes, looks like a hat. It was described as gold or brass coloured with a silver rim, and all we've done is turn it black and white and turn it 90 degrees, because it is exactly the same craft it was seen in 1965 from the famous Heflin photographs. This phenomenon doesn't age as well. I mean, we see this in our society, in technology. We can tell the difference between a vehicle, a car for an example, which is new today, or 30 years ago, or 60 years ago. We see the technological differences. We don't see that in this phenomena. We don't see those changes. We don't know why that is. Have they reached perfection? Did they not know? Did they not think like us? Did they not know that putting red streaks down the side makes it go faster? This is a completely different way of thinking. I was only going to touch briefly on the Tic Tac UFO when it came out, and obviously there was some confusion over what the video footage represented in regards to the photograph that was released. It was, in fact, a balloon, a number 1 balloon, what you buy for an 18th birthday, a 1 and an 8, or a 2 and a 1 on the 21st. It got up in the sky and it caused a bit of an alarm in the UK. Unfortunately, this picture was actually used in conjunction with the video footage from the Tic Tac UFO information that was released by the Pentagon not some time back, and caused a little upset. The problem is that when it comes to these, there are strange objects out there that do defy recognition to the point where they do change shape. We've seen objects literally change shape in the sky. We don't know if we're dealing with a metaphysical phenomenon. This is where the metaphysics will come into it. In this case, this particular photograph was in fact a number 1 balloon. But according to tens of thousands of reports worldwide, possibly that a single phenomena has been at play. It's been played for thousands of years. There have been over 2,000 different types of entities reported. Over 2,000 different types. Over 30 varied greys. That's what we refer to as the grey. Over 30 different types of greys, some of them with long black hair. We take the Ariel school incident in Rua, which John Mack investigated with Chrissy Hyde. We know that there are over 300 different locations that they say they're coming out from space. We're coming from this system, we're coming from that system, we're coming from this planet or that planet. Over 300 different ones been told. What I'm saying here is that are we all being told the truth? Or is it just a story to be told here? Is it just tell the humans we come from there, tell the humans we come out from outer space, or a particular planet, or a particular system? We don't know. The ball's out there, to be honest with you. We just don't know if we're being told the truth. Are there only good and bad experiences? How do you measure intent? Well, what we have learned, and this is an absolute fact, is that this is such a very phenomenon. It all seems to happen under the same compass of the paranormal, the ufological, the metaphysical, the strange, the profound, the weird. It all falls into the same subject. We're dealing with the same phenomena, but a different mask. Barry?
Now, as I said, we were seeing this manifestation occur in the outer edges of what we can visibly see. It's interesting as well to consider that as children, many of us are parents and will understand that when the child comes to you in the middle of the night and says, "Mum, Dad, something came from the wardrobe, something came from the closet or from under the bed," and as adults, responsible adults, we'll walk them back into the room and we can't see it. "There's nothing there, son. It's okay. It was just a dream. Here's a chocolate cookie and some hot milk. Go back to sleep." The truth of the matter is that there's something we must consider here, in that the child's eye is different to us as an adult. It has a wider appreciation of the visible spectrum. And there is a filter that thickens over the eye between the ages of 7 and 13, in which our sight narrows. So as adults, we can no longer see, for the majority of us, we can no longer see what we saw as children. So next time that your child comes in and says, Mom, Dad, there's something under the bed, switch on the light. And who knows what could happen. Now, what we have to consider again is this age-old question. What is it that we're actually facing? Travis Walton, of course, everyone here will know Travis Walton. His case, he was reporting, he met these beings, and when he was taken up into the ship in 1975, those beings also reflect what this lady reported in 1954 in England. She's seen them through this window. They were the very, very same entities. From what we're seeing here is that it's this particular same phenomenon, the same way that they're interacting with us. It's just our interpretations.
Yep. So what's very interesting about that Travis case is that there's been this divide over the years. I was saying the Nordics, the guys in blue are the good guys. The Greys, stay away from them, they're the nasty ones. Well, how do we actually reference Travis's case? Because he had both. And that really threw everything up there in the air, because all the guys that thought all the Greys were just all bad and all the good ones were Nordics, they kind of go scratching their heads going, now what's the situation? We don't really know. This is the biggest problem. There's this perception that there is good and bad. Well, yes, maybe there is. But there's certainly not just love and light in this field of the ufology. We've always told people there is a darker side of ufology. Do not ever forget the things that have happened in the past that show and demonstrate those actions.
And it's interesting as well from our standpoint, looking at it from remote viewing. CIA-trained remote viewers, of course, were viewing one particular incident, which happened here in the US. They wanted to look into it to see what exactly was going on. And it was a Nordic that had appeared to them, but something just wasn't quite right. This Nordic was a little peeved, let's say, that they couldn't understand. It was getting annoyed that they just couldn't understand the great wisdom that he possessed in his head. They discovered that this was another image that was put in front. And it was interesting that when they moved the image to the side, what appeared behind was what typically, of course, a lot of us will recognize as being this particular reptilian. And I'm not going to get into reptilians per se. I'm just going to say there is deception there. We need to be aware of that particular deception. Now, Culeros Incident, of course, happened 1977 and 1978. Culeros is in Brazil. This particular incident became infamous because the UFOs were actually attacking the people of the village. Now, these beams of light were penetrating the people's flesh. They were burning them. In fact, there was one particular person who was said to have died from these particular attacks. People were being confined to their homes. The military were being brought in. They were investigating. Aircraft was being brought in to try and understand what was going on in Culeros. And there was tens of people who were being harmed during this particular incident. But what exactly was going on? Now we're starting to understand a greater picture when we start to unite the fields of investigation, taking away these boxes and stripping them away. We're starting to see, wait a minute, there is a particular connection here that's uniting many of the subject matters. And that, folks, is magnetic anomalies. And using the satellites that we have available to us, we're able to identify these particular magnetic anomalies around the planet. And we're starting to see these key areas that promotes this type of activity. And this activity will take the form of UFOs, abductions, mutilations. You will also find cryptids. You will also find disappearances, bizarre, unusual disappearances of people and animals. We have a plethora of other things that we tend to associate with particular fields of investigation that normally we would look singularly at. So now we're starting to see this unified phenomena beginning to appear in these strong magnetic anomalies. I've got to show you the pink aspect of the anomaly is going to be the strongest. The people in Culeros were saying that these UFOs were coming from the ocean. That's actually true. When we start using the science, we can actually back up what they're saying. We can see that the anomaly itself is predominantly over the water. They're utilizing that to come through to here. That was a big breakthrough for us. Now, this was a particular testimony that was given forward. I'll let him speak, and then I'll come back to it.
During a certain period of time, there were lots of injuries made by this object that would come from the sky and emit a beam of light towards people's body, making them faint and become anemic.
Now, there was a key point. There was a clue in what was happening. The beam of light was making people anemic. Now, there was another component in which we were finding in many of the other fields. During the night attacks, 9 out of 10 women that are attacked, it will happen when they're in their monthly cycle. They become anemic. So we started, there was a pattern that we began to see. Now then, whenever we started going back and started looking at our ancestors and what they were saying, especially from an Irish standpoint, the Celtic heritage, they were identifying iron as being this component, the serious component that was helping us battle what was coming through these particular anomalies. Now, these attacks we tend to find all across the planet. Even in India, we were finding these attacks. And these balls of light that were appearing around the size of a baseball were attacking these people in a village. And we've got governmental officials who were reporting from 100 and 200 miles away, telling us it's okay. It was a drone. It was a drone. Well, drones don't tend to hit people and cause burns and everything else. This was completely different, and it was just another form of the government coming along and saying, "Don't worry, it's okay. We can't stop it, but it's okay. Don't worry about it." Iron was the key component. This is something that we've seen from a Celtic heritage all the way back. Iron was exceptionally important. In fact, it is also very interesting that the Celts themselves were dealing with the things that were coming through these particular doorways. Doorways that were left not by the Celts, but by people who were thousands of years older than the Celts. We can still access these monuments on the island of Ireland and in England and Scotland and Wales 24/7, 365 days a year. But what we're starting to understand now is with the help of archaeological acoustics, we're starting to understand, wait a minute, these doorways are something else. These are more than what we thought. And iron is a key component. As I said before, the Celts were dealing with what was coming through these particular doorways. Above all other nations around the planet, the Celtic people are the ones who suffer the most from hematoma. I forgot it again. Donna, what's it called? Hematomacrosis. There we go. That is an overproduction of iron in the blood. That in itself was the key component to stop what was happening to them. During that particular process, the iron affects the T4, the shutting down of the T4. They can't neutralize the people anymore. This has been tested. I have even suffered it myself. Now, the Celts, unfortunately, in the early days, this was untreatable. Eventually, it was going to kill you in the long run, which was very sad, of course. But while the doorways are open, as I talked before, these circles that would open, these unusual things that would happen, we would see these landscapes beyond that are not there. If you have someone who is rich in iron and steps 1 foot in, 1 foot out, they can keep that doorway open. They can't shut that down. Mind you, according to the legends, it's also a place that we shouldn't be either. So we're on a lose-lose there. Now, iron itself, of course, we see around the old churchyards. We see them circling the old abbeys and everything else. Iron was very, very rich and identified as keeping away the evil, if you like, of the world. And even the horseshoe, of course, you know, depending on the orientation of the horseshoe, it would attract luck to your home, or it would empty the luck from your home. And iron, of course, along by the windows, was also very, very a key component to keep the evil out of the home. Well, what evil is that? Do you mean the demons, or do you mean, and again, the list goes on and on and on of what they were doing. We do have wood carvings from the 15th century, French wood carvings, which does show small creatures with long spikes sticking them into the bellies of the victims, us. And these were meant to be the middle-aged demons of old. Well, wait a minute. What about these experiments that are being done during the abductions of people? Small people, needles. It's the same phenomena, a different mask. It's just how we interpret that. And there's an element of that about how we interpret, but there's also an element of what they want us to see. And that will come back into this again.
What's interesting is when we're talking about iron, the horseshoe is made from iron, and a lot of people use it as a symbolism of luck. But actually, you have to research back and realise what it was actually being utilised for. There were people who were invaded by paranormal disturbances who placed iron nails around their beds to ward off the phenomena. Why iron? Well, it did seem to work. Exactly the same things, iron rods placed in grounds around farms where cattle mutilations were taking place and suddenly stopped. Even people who claiming alien abduction wearing iron pendants, like I have one, I know Barry has one, around their necks. Again, the phenomena ceased to some degree. It would seem that this phenomena has an aversion to iron. We're trying to figure out at this moment in time what the resonant frequency of iron is, to see if that actually is the key element, because we know that a lot of things is associated with sound, and we're trying to figure out there's obviously something regarding iron.
I should also point out here, folks, that iron itself will work as a repellent if you wear it as an amulet around the neck or whatever. But the moment you go underground, it stops working. It seems that the iron is affected by the ultraviolet of the sun, and it creates this field. And that field interrupts what they try to do. Even at night, we still have ultraviolet, which washes around the atmosphere. But understanding that is a key component. When we go underground and we're cut off from the sun, the rules change.
Yeah, ultraviolet, lack of ultraviolet, yeah. So where are they coming from? Well, statistically speaking, there's a UFO seen every 8 seconds, according around the world. Now, that's a lot of UFOs. You would say, okay, well, where are they all? Because if they are coming to Earth, then there'd be a superhighway out there, travelling backwards and forwards 24 hours a day, and highways make noise. So when we talk to SETI astronomers, leading astronomers, they gave us a wonderful quote, and I had to say this. Space is unusually quiet. We don't even know if what we are doing is the best method. Well, that says it all. It's unusually quiet. If we had a superhighway out there, going backwards and forwards from Earth with all these thousands upon thousands of UFOs, then surely we'd be making a lot of noise, and we'd be seeing that. So time to get to the crunch of the matter. Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso. Some of us will know about his work in regarding Roswell and back engineering. But what people don't often know is that about a statement he made. In 1982, the US government were monitoring UFO activity around 7 major magnetic anomalies. This went unknown. This went unheard of. People just cast it aside. Cast their eyes to the heavens and pondered which planet these guys are coming from. In fact, the phenomenon has been right under our noses all the time. It glamours us. It appears in the skies, glamouring us with its wonders. And we, not having our fight or flight mechanism because we're so hooked on refined sugar, that adrenal weakness, we can't even look after ourselves anymore. We don't have the survival sense to say, run to the hills, guys. This is not a good thing to experience. What we do know is that the phenomenon has been always here, and right under our noses. And of course, what he tried to tell people back then was say, the government, I know exactly how this phenomenon is interacting with planet Earth. And it's how its methods of getting here, probably.
Now, these anomalies that we've been tracking right around the planet, this particular software is available to everyone. It's free. Download it onto your iPad or your PC, whatever you use. Now, what we're having is a problem at the moment with the magnetic field, because no doubt you're probably aware that there was an emergency meeting in January in which the governments were discussing the movement of the North Pole, the magnetic North Pole. It's moving faster now than it has ever done before within our recent history. It's now moving 55 miles every year. In fact, the magnetic pole now is heading towards Siberia. And because of the emergency for shipping lanes and things like that, they had to go and readjust their maps in January to correct this. So we're also seeing this effect within the satellite images as well, and we're seeing a weakening in the fields as well as we try to understand and keep up, because there are new anomalies now opening up. As the magnetics change on the planet, we're starting to see other areas, and we're starting to identify, and we know through this particular phenomena that there is going to be activity at these places, and we can even know what they're going to be. Now, the correlation between the UFOs and positive magnetic anomalies goes without question. But really what we're trying to understand now is, well, how are they using this? What is exactly happening with these magnetic anomalies? Now, this is the first early mapping techniques known as EMA. It's first started during the 1980s by the European Space Agency. And it was a grand map for its time, but of course no use to us. We needed more from that. So now we moved on to what we have today, which of course in itself is far, far better, because we can now zoom in on these maps to ground level. So we're able to identify them very, very easily. The right-hand one, of course, is the Earth's magnetic anomalies. What we tend to see is smaller pockets of anomalies on the northern hemisphere and larger magnetic anomalies in the southern hemisphere. The likes of Africa has one of the biggest magnetic anomalies that we're aware of. But we also have a mapping system there as well, which also shows the gravitational anomalies as well, and we're able to correlate. Is there a correlation between the gravity and the magnetics? And what we tend to see is a very, very loose connection that we have with the gravity. So we don't tend to spend too much time on the gravity anomalies. Now, this is part of the magnetic anomaly map. What we see here with all the UFOs down through the middle is Ethiopia. Now, these particular UFOs are representative of UFOs that were being reported. Now, Ethiopia itself on the mapping system is black. We can't see what the magnetic anomalies are in Ethiopia. Governments decide what we can see and what we can't see. So we can't see what is happening in Ethiopia. But what we did do is cross-reference that with the gravitational anomalies of the same place, and we can see that there are unusual. This is one of the key points where we started to see a connection between the gravitational anomalies and the magnetic anomalies. Ethiopia is one of those places. Very, very unusual. Now, is there an agenda to convince the world that they, whatever they represent, are traveling thousands of light years to get to Earth? Are they really? Or have they always been here? After all, this is our thinking and our physics. The evidence would suggest that they are already here and may have always been so, shaping and interacting with humanity since the beginning, and in some cases even altering history. Now we know where certain significant locations are through the magnetic anomaly maps. We can start to investigate much more thoroughly and technologically in a hope of gathering new data, and we are starting to do that. We are starting to see this, and we're also starting to see through the ruse that they're not necessarily coming from up there. It's more like down here. And they're utilizing these magnetic anomalies. And we got to face facts, folks. When they were coming through to the abductees and to the people in power, they were saying, you're really destroying the planet. We're here to help you stop destroying the planet. I guarantee you, folks, they had no worry about us whatsoever. In fact, no concern whatsoever for us. It was the planet. That was the important thing. That had to stay intact. The magnetic anomalies are key. That is a key point for this movement back and forward. Now this, folks, is another magnetic anomaly here that you see in Canada. This phenomena on the left came through, entered the forest, and then pierced into the mountain. Never came back. But what we do see is that this magnetic anomaly coming down the left-hand side, the purple, a very, very dense anomaly. This is where it was happening. Okay? Now, this particular mountain is a volcano in Japan. And this camera was monitoring this happening. And you may have noticed the UFO that left the volcano and went straight up. And also this white light had appeared. Now, this puzzled the camera crew guys. They were going, what on earth? And when they zoomed in, they could see something leaving the white light and moving back and forward, back and forward. And this continued in Japan. They had no idea what on earth was going on. Yep. Now, Hessdalen, the beautiful land of Norway, is another place where you tend to see these unusual lights. I care to call them the amber gamblers, for various reasons. But Hessdalen itself produces phenomena which can outsurpass our best aircraft at speeds and also appear in light spectrums beyond what we can see. Sometimes they can only trace these lights with radar. Now, the people have been, of course, working there since the 1980s, trying to understand this phenomena. But again, as you can see, where the X is, that's Hessdalen. It appears in one of these magnetic anomalies. And that in itself is indicative, again, of something that we're seeing time and time and time again. And these anomalies can be seen on your own computer for free. You can do this at home. You can find the location which is close to you here. Because Steve and I, when we had the opportunity to go to contact in the desert, we noticed that there was quite a few people outside who were trying to call in folks from up above. But we knew that the anomaly was just 7 miles from the hotel. So we went into the desert. It took us half an hour, and we got a response. We got our activity because we understood the phenomena. And we didn't stay too long either. Now again, these are the lights in Hessdalen, folks. These are not meteor. These are not aircraft. These are not flares. It's interesting to note, Steve and I were just having a conversation about this today, that these lights are also possibly what our ancestors from China were reporting when they said that they saw the dragons, and even particular instances which I'll be touching on here tonight, and what was being reported in Ireland as well. Now, these other cases, of course, again, we're seeing this crossover magnetic anomalies. Flatwoods Monster in West Virginia, again, appears in a magnetic anomaly. Hopkinsville Encounter, X marks the spot. You find it in the magnetic anomaly. You will also find other things happening within that magnetic anomaly. And what we do as people now, we don't talk anymore. We don't talk to our neighbours. We don't communicate the same as what we used to 50, 100 years ago. Skinwalker Ranch, of course, X marks the spot. And we also noted that this particular anomaly, which we were told was not there, we can clearly see there is a magnetic anomaly there. It also heads up over the ridge to the north of the ranch, the northwest, activity will happen there. And it will also happen further southern, a little south of the ranch as well. Now, we know that there's a ranch next door as well, I'm led to believe also has a little bit of activity going on, but we'll not talk about that today. The correlation between the Mothman and the UFO incidents is, of course, Point Pleasant, X marks the spot, magnetic anomalies again and again and again. Travis Walton, X marks the spot. The A70 alien abduction in Scotland was one of the most famous in the UK in 1992. Now, this particular anomaly, where X marks the spot, also shows phenomena such as the dogmen, abductions, mutilations of animals. And you also have this unusual place. It's a Neolithic passage chamber built around 3,500 BC. And that has unusual properties, which I don't think we're talking about in this one, are we? No. We also see the Broadhaven UFO incidents in Pembrokeshire in Wales. X marks the spot. The Lonnie Zamora UFO incident, again, UFO anomaly. Rua, Zimbabwe. And Giant Rock, just down the road, in the great scheme of things, appears in a giant magnetic anomaly. Now, I got to point out that the entities that were known to be appearing here, no one actually seen them coming down. They were already there. So we got to consider this particular illusion. So did they come from wherever they were coming from, and just no one happened to see them land or leave? Or was there something else going on? What we can tell you for sure with scientific material is that there is a magnetic anomaly there, which usually links you to the ones that are already here. Now, this is another strange coincidence as well, if such a thing exists. Strange disappearances, which David Paulides mentions about in his wonderful books, Missing 411. Both the East Coast and West Coast, where these groups of people disappear in national parks, for instance, under unusual circumstances. For instance, I'll give you an idea. I'll give you one particular instance where a child was walking with his father and his grandfather, small child. Suddenly, the father turns to speak to his own father, turns back, the child's gone. It happens that fast. They're just gone. No sign of struggle, no blood, nothing. There is nothing left behind. Gone. So these are the strange disappearances that we're looking at. Now, when we start looking at these and understand what's happening, we started to see a bigger picture, and taking it away from America, we started looking at the bigger global picture. Now, when we look at this conservatively, and we got to look at this under a conservative eye, we understand that over the last 20 years, 4.5 million people have not come back. That is the population of New Zealand, who have not come back over a 20-year period. That, folks, are conservative figures, exceptionally, in fact, stupidly conservative figures. In a world in which we've got so much war and everything else and misreporting, we don't know what that figure is. It could skyrocket through the roof. Now, looking at the disappearances, this is Yosemite National Park, again, just down the road. You will see that the disappearances, X marks the spot. Disappearances in Smoky National Park, again, X marks the spot. Three Sisters Wildernesses up in, I believe that's Oregon. And now we're going to look at animal mutilations. And these animal mutilations are also linked to these magnetic anomalies. And these animals, of course, a lot of them, what we're seeing, the evidence is suggesting that they're being picked up from the ground and dropped from a great height. Their back legs are being smashed and everything else, and their bones are being broken. But what's being done to them is being done while they're off the ground, and they're being dropped back. This is happening in connection with these magnetic anomalies. Same phenomenon, different mass. Now, Steve had mentioned earlier about this, the more ancient connection with these abductions or mutilations. We were led to believe that these mutilations began in the 1940s, 1950s. That's not the case. Because I came across a case in Ireland in which one particular farmer back in the late 1800s, and the account of him is that he had a cow who had just given birth to a calf. He put them into the barn beside the old stone cottage, which was pretty typical for back then. He closed it in and went back to his bed. He came back the next morning to find the cow and calf dead. And the udders of the female were gone. He blamed it, now this is going to be typically Irish, he blamed it on the fairies. Folks, it's the same phenomenon, a different mask. The Fae do the exact same the Greys do. The exact same. From the manipulation of the child during gestation, the pregnancy, they are all affected by the Fae. They do the exact same thing. They will take you from, and it still happens today. You will end up in a certain place and you wonder, how on earth did I get here? You have no memory of how you got there. You have no memory of what happened in between. That still happens today. The Fae are exceptionally active. And it's us that has chose to disconnect ourselves from what goes on around us. We put in earbuds as we walk. We very rarely walk anywhere nowadays. We even drive to the store and we turn up the radio to listen to what's going on. We isolate ourselves. Doesn't mean that the activity doesn't stop. The activity still happens. And that is still happening today. In fact, the mutilations that are happening in Ireland is phenomenal. But you won't hear about it on the news. One particular farmer, which Steve and I have discussed, in the north of Ireland, has lost over 500 head of animals in his stock over the last 20 years. 500 in one farm. And he has been, I'll not get into his story. It gets very political, very complicated very quickly. But this guy, he was told, put up or shut up. And pretty much that's the way it has been left. And many other farmers find themselves in the same situation, especially in the UK. Subsidies will be pulled, and those subsidies the farmers need to keep their homes. If they start squealing from the top of the rooftops, something is happening to my cattle, there go your subsidies, there goes your home. And that's unfortunate that they're being hushed up that way. Now, animal mutilations, as I say, are taking place all over the world. And with the work of my wife, we were able to find that the immune system of every species helps to fight off infections, pathogens, and diseases. A vital component of any immune system are the mucous membranes, which lies mostly in soft tissue around the mouth, the nose, the eyes, the ears. The total area of mucosa is around 400 meters squared. So considering the skin surface is about 2 meters squared, this demonstrates to us how vital this is. When in a situation that creates fear, again we're back to this fear element, or stress, the fight or flight response, it kicks in and we automatically go into survival mode. This kicks in our cortisol, which is released and enter our bloodstream, and our immune system is impelled and mobilizes with increased activation, the fear induction process. Now, there's one thing that you must consider, and I'll ask a lot of you here because we're involved here with the UFOs, and I'm going to tap into a little bit of abduction here. A lot of us have no recollection of being abducted. Yet many of us will have this terrible night's sleep. You go, oh my goodness, what on earth happened? I'm terribly weak. All this is going on. The clue could possibly be in your ear. Wax, another member of the mucus family, if you create huge amounts of wax, that can be an indication of fear, anxiety. So that's something to consider if you're not remembering what is possibly happening. Oh, sorry. Now, this unfortunate accident, we're told, happened in Norway, just southwest of Hessdalen. Now, this is one of the largest national parks in Norway, and it houses one of the largest deer stocks in history, in Europe. They say that lightning killed over 323 reindeer on one of the high plateaus. A lot of you may remember this incident. The fall pattern is very unusual. The fact that they're missing heads was also very unusual.
Is that the public explanation of the lightning strike?
That was the public, the public explanation. Now, this happened in 2016, and we were also told then that that the reason that they had their heads missing is that the government officials were taking them to check for a particular disease that deers can get in the brain. So, okay, grand, that's okay. And then we started looking at other phenomena. We said, well, hold on, this is a national park. It appears in one of our magnetic anomalies. So there should be other stuff there. So we started looking for the usual factors, the disappearances, the lights. Everything was pulled. There is nothing mentioned on this site. And we then realized that there was a population of humans had existed there since 6,300 BC. So there should be bodies. There should be bones found. There should be a listing somewhere of human remains that was found. Nothing. Unusual. Now, granted, there may be an aspect here of language, a language barrier. A lot of the information wouldn't be reported in English, per se. But we also see a lot of this happening. Does anybody like cruising? You know, I mean, as in cruise ships. Yeah, you might want to do that again. The amount of people, the amount of people who disappear off cruise ships is phenomenal. Yet it's not being reported. That is something to consider. The information is being pooled. In fact, I was giving a lecture on disappearances, strange disappearances on cruise ships. And the cruise ship that came back was missing the nurse who had gone missing en route. They never found her. So these are things that tend to happen. I'm not going to go into which line it was because it's happening in all of them. And it seems to happen on the darkest of nights as well, which is unusual, and always the side away from shore. So, but there we go. That's what tends to happen. Now, did these animals did they die from a lightning strike? From what they were saying, it is quite possible. But it was interesting as well from one of the photographs. You're taking this one, aren't you? From one of the photographs that we could see is that one of the deers that was found was a good 300 meters away from the initial circle of deer. Now, unless there was a second strike that took that deer down, it was very, very unusual. But what we started to look for then were these unusual signatures, and we had to scrap the modern look at what we do with magnetic anomalies and look at the ancient, the myth and mythology and folklore of that area. What does that say? That's whenever we found the reference to the fae, and more notably to the gold. Because where you got doorways, you got gold. And that is one of the key points. They always wanted the gold, always after the gold. Steve?
You mean the leprechauns, Barry, eh? So what did our ancestors know? Well, they knew a lot. They were considerably clever in regarding this phenomena. They knew where these doorways were. They knew where the positive magnetic anomalies were. They also knew where negative magnetic anomalies were. In a lot of negative magnetic anomalies, they were sacrificing, making sacrifices to the gods. The Inca did this considerably, and lots of cultures did this. And it's surprising how many people were sacrificed to the gods. But when you start to realize that a lot of these sacrifices were taking place in negative magnetic anomalies, which is the blue zones, should we say, women, a lot of women during the menstrual cycle were sacrificed in ancient days. Again, because there was a lack of iron in the body, and they seem to know that this phenomena is evasive to iron, just as we've mentioned before about the iron rods, why people placed up iron in horseshoes around to ward away phenomena. Why even in medieval times, churches, cemeteries had iron around them? Ask those questions, dividing the walls of reality. Barry?
Now, when we started to look at this aspect of the anomalies, and we of course at the beginning we were concentrating our efforts on the positive anomalies, the purple ones, and we were ignoring the blues, the negatives. All of a sudden, something happened that we started, wait a minute, what's this? And we found that 70% of the world's top suicide locations appear in negative anomalies. So somewhere it's having an effect on us. And we started to see work from Russia, from Canada, from the US, from England, from Australia, that were all identifying that the land itself seemed to have some sort of strange effect on us, on levels that we just weren't contemplating. Well, at least in a modern sense. But what we were seeing from these ancient connections, these mounds, these doorways to other worlds, was a serpentine connection. Again, we're back to this reptile connection again. Now, this crucifix in the middle is a Celtic cross. This is the only earliest depiction of a Celtic cross that we have in Ireland. It's from the 8th century. Now, what it shows are 3 heads around the top, and this is a direct mimic of a passage chamber from an aerial view, a bird's eye view of a passage chamber. This is a passage chamber. You've got the circle around the outside. You've got 3 components on the inside in which you can sit, and you produce vibration. Vibration is key. Not only that, but the sun. The sun was a key factor here. The sun was the indicator of when this process began. And what we see from the early depiction is the spiral that begins to open through the vibration, and these serpents which were coming through, these gatekeepers, if you like, to this other world. The serpent worship was rich across this planet. Now we think, okay, we're back to Babylonian times. No, oh no. Serpent worship has been tracked back to 70,000 BC in Africa. So it doesn't end with Babylonian times, Sumerian times. It goes back before then. What we're seeing is another mask from their perspective, which we're being corrupted with time and time again. We need to scrap the mask and follow the phenomena. That is the way that we track this stuff down. We ignore the way that it appears. We concentrate on the way that it acts with us. That is the key component. Now, what we tend to see is this serpent connection right across the planet. From, of course, the Mayan traditions right into Egypt and down through. There is always this serpentine connection, and even into India. And it's interesting that this particular temple in India, in Sri Paramaswamy, excuse me for pronunciation, temple in India, this particular door is made of iron. Now, as you can see, the large serpentine connections there to this particular door, both on the surface and around the pillars on the entranceway. Again, gold is a key component here. We've got to remember the gold. This particular temple, when they opened the other vaults, they discovered $1 trillion worth of gold was hidden in the temple. $1 trillion worth of gold. Massive amounts. And they suspect that there is more behind this door. But this door is different. This door is made of iron. And what do we know about iron? It protects us from what comes through. And this door is only opened through a particular Garda mantra. And this mantra, by the way, I got to say, is performed specifically by people who are really well trained. Very, very small amount of people who can do this. And because there are particular vocals in the throat that need to be exercised and developed to produce this mantra. A mantra, by the way, that also protects you from serpents. Now, the thing is, according to tradition, if this doorway is opened, then the world will end. So none of us want that. But we also see the vibrations and frequencies, this built-in resonance of chambers. What was their function? Now, we've got this temple here, for instance, and the walls in it, they're granite walls, but they're polished. To do that polishing, it's tremendous amounts of heat. Where were they getting this heat from? Now, when you start developing or following this particular process, the resonance within these particular chambers are tremendous. And what we tend to see is this, it follows right across the planet that we're getting this harmonic frequency. Again, from the acoustic archaeology, we tend to find this frequency that's coming through. Now, that's recorded within that chamber. And I got to say that a lot of that, of what you were hearing, is very, very similar to the Tawas hum. What we're hearing in Ireland, what they're hearing in Australia, is very, very similar. And it's acting on us in a way that we don't understand. Now, the hypogeum in Malta resonates at 110 hertz, or 111 hertz, sorry. The hypogeum was discovered only in the last century. And I got to say, it was full of human remains, stacked to the roof with human remains. None of the body parts remain now; they've all gone. We don't know where they went. There are many different stories of the hypogeum, of experiences that were had, giants that were seen in it, disappearances of school children are said to have happened there as well. But again, this cruciform pattern was very, very instrumental. And what tends to happen is that in some parts of the hypogeum, when you go to this and you produce the frequency, which is produced through the voice, when you produce this in particular chambers in the hypogeum in Malta, you shut down the left-hand hemisphere of the brain and open up the right. And this connects you to this almost universal knowing. It's very, 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 very strange. But there's another chamber that if you go into and use a different frequency, you will see. You will see behind the doorway. And this was something which was also used even within Solomon's temple. It's something with the same designs were being used in Solomon's temple as well. Now, this Newgrange mound here in Ireland resonates at 110 hertz. And as you can see, this switching of the temporal lobes of the left and right dominance related to emotional processing, this would have been turning on an area of the brain that biobehavioral scientists believe relates to mood, empathy, social behavior, and the spirit. So that is a very, very important thing to consider. Now, in Bosnia, of course, there's some controversial pyramids out there, but it's very, very interesting to note that there was a frequency was recorded of this particular pyramid at 28 kilohertz, and it sounds almost like voice. Now, we got a note that a lot of people would say, oh, it was a radio, it was something you were tuning into, whatever, whatever, whatever. These particular frequencies that were recorded were checked various different times of the year, different times of the day, but the one thing that kept coming back is that it would only send out the signal when the sun was directly overhead. Why? We still don't know. This is something from our ancients that we have lost in time. Now, again, we talked about the suicide rates and the magnetic anomalies. Georgia, unfortunately, appears in one of those particular areas. And if we look at the statistics over the last 5 years, it shows a 4.5% increase, unfortunately, within those particular areas. Now, in the Smithsonian magazine of 2011, Dr. Lisa Randall from the Harvard University said, "I believe an extra dimension may exist close to our familiar reality, hidden except for a bizarre sapping of strength of gravity as we see it."
Gravity being the significant thing as we draw to a close now, we hear this reference to these chambers as portals. Portals, portals, portals. Is there really any evidence to support it? That's the main thing. That's why we're here. Well, it would seem that portals, the professional name for is electron diffused regions, is in fact real. NASA announced a number of years ago very, very slow little bits of information locked away within a certain websites. People didn't know about it. They didn't go to put it out in front page news items. That they were investigating portals, electron diffused regions is a professional name, stabilised ones at that, in Earth's orbit and also just outside Earth and between Earth and the Sun. They actually announced it. NASA's actually got its own website, announces about electron diffused regions.
Hidden magnetic portals around Earth.
You can actually look for that. Hidden magnetic portals around Earth. And what they found was, they sent 4 satellites up there and found stabilised portals. These things can be claimed to be utilised. If that is the case, then what we're hearing about from Philip Corso from 1982, that the US government are interested in magnetic anomalies associated to UFOs, starts to get a little bit more interesting. We know that UFOs are seen not just around the moon. There's thousands of videos and photographs over the internet. You can see them for yourselves. But they're coming out of the moon as well, not just as simply around them. We have videos all the time coming forward. We can see one here with one object. It just flies out of the moon, comes out from inside the moon. On a close-up, we can see that again. There she goes. And it's not the only things that we're actually seeing. I mean, what's interesting is that when we do the graphing of the moon in regard to electromagnetics, magnetic anomalies, we find that only on the far side of the moon, as we can see here, the right side is topography. This bit here is the magnetic anomalies. And that's all there is on the moon. It's on the far side, and a small, highly positive magnetic anomalies there. What's interesting is that Professor Sarah Stewart from the Natural Sciences states it's a conundrum, is that the magnetic anomalies on the moon are not correlated with any surface geology. They don't know why they're there. They have no idea what's going on. But it is interesting to note that when Apollo 10 astronauts went round the far side of the moon and over that particular area, they recorded strange, unusual frequencies, sounds. NASA recorded them and put them out. They were hidden for 40-odd years from the general public. They didn't release the information. There's the actual script of the conversation from the astronauts. As they were flying over these positive magnetic anomalies, they were picking up frequencies. Just from the radiation there. The sun is also, SOHO satellites and a number of other satellites which are monitoring the sun's activity are also showing UFOs, not just around the sun, but coming out of the sun. From September to 2018, one of the most recent of SOHO satellites shows an object, very, very large, coming out from the surface of the sun, just as we've seen video footage of them coming out of the moon. And again, the electromagnetics there, positive magnetic anomalies, all around the sun, on the far side of the moon. What we think we can hear is that, is this phenomena really travelling the distances of space, just like our physics would tell us? Or are they utilising the planets? Are they utilising our moon? Are they utilising the stars to get here? And the magnetic anomalies from popping in and popping out, coming into our reality and out of our reality with a snap of a finger. Because that is what we're seeing. This is what we're seeing today. That one minute they're there, the next minute they're gone. the evidence would point to that they're not transitioning from point A to point B. And as Barry said earlier about radar, that sometimes they seem to have bent time. It's 1 minute they were there and there instantly. And that we cannot put that into our physics. The same physics that the CIA, when they conducted their investigation of UFOs, referenced it as weird frigging magic, because they didn't know what to say. So what do we know? This phenomenon is not new. There's the start. It's been with us for a long time, probably predating documenting history. The evidence to support the theory of the conscious connection between the phenomenon and the observer is tremendously high. There's evidence, so much evidence to support that. That the UFO incidents, paranormal occurrences, even cryptid sightings that take place in these locations, strange disappearances as well, all seem to be connected somehow. And that some of this phenomena is evasive to iron and ultraviolet light, as we've found in paranormal cases. And that the phenomena may somehow produce gravitational disturbances. That there's a correlation between UFO activity and positive magnetic anomalies. That we may be physiologically and psychologically affected through living in areas of negative magnetic anomalies. They can affect us, our way of living. Of course, our ancestors probably knew that. And that our ancestors knew about how to tap the source of producing resonant chambers, resonant frequencies in significant locations. They were tapping the source. That the US government may have known this for a long, long time, but what they're actually doing is that they're keeping us focused out there, keeping our mindset on which planet are these guys coming from, how they're getting here, how far do they have to travel through space, when in fact this phenomenon is probably right under our noses, and they don't want to tell us that A, they do not have control of the skies, B, they cannot understand this phenomenon properly, and thirdly, there's no control right under our noses. So really then, just as our ancestors described, we are dealing with an interdimensional, a metaphysical, a supernatural, spiritual intelligence. That's how all our ancestors talked about. Well, they're right, because it does encompass all those fields. And then probably the most important thing is that it's time to change. We do need to change in this subject and throw away most of this in the trash, to be honest with you. Throw away most of what we've learned in the subject of UFOs in the trash. We really do. Because we're not going to get any further. We spent too many years and not getting anywhere. So we need to come up with new theories and new ideas and give us new reasons to investigate. We need to move forward and attempt to deliver some real answers. For far too long, the subject has become a political. It's become deceitful with fake news over the internet. It's become an absolute minefield. In fact, historical research into aerial phenomena was better than it is in current day, in the days of the 1950s and Project Blue Book and those sort of things. There was no internet around. There was no manipulation of photographs. There was no Photoshop software for doing that. And there are millions of those today. And the thing is that what we had then was a sincerity from UFO investigators about delivering the truth. It's time to explore the phenomenon of what it truly represents. That the credibility needs to be put back in this subject. And it does. This really does. Because the problem that we have in this is that we have so many incidents of fake news. We have so many incidents of colourful stories from people without a shred of evidence. Why we are wasting our time on that when we've got to find out what this phenomenon, what's it really consist of? The only way is to push forward. And no longer should ufology show that we have lost our way, because we haven't. We need to remain safe, as we've talked about, understand this phenomenon, what it really is, and prepare. Don't just go rushing out there. Prepare yourself for it. If you are interested in this subject, then take the warnings, be careful, and just be alert, really. Because most people go flying into this not knowing if they're going to have a bad experience or what type of experience. Unfortunately, the way we are refined today, how we have so much refined sugar today, is that we cannot identify the fight or flight response, the survival sensors, kicking in to say, get out of town. And finally, no longer should we show to people that we have lost our way, we haven't in this subject. Listen to our bodies, and just remember that it isn't all love and light. There are people out there having bad experiences, unfortunately. But there are people out there who believe that they're having some good experiences. So the problematics of this is that how do we know when we have a light in the sky that suddenly appears and might glamour us? We don't know what's that going to entail. We don't know. And when we were in Palm Springs, we kind of knew once this thing had appeared to us to get out of Dodge. We just did and got out there. But it just goes to show it's down to the research and doing the work and going out there. You can check this for yourselves. Most people will understand what Google Earth is. It's a piece of software on the internet. You look out for the search for the KMZ files for the Earth magnetic anomaly and the gravitational anomaly. If you want to know more about that, come see us at the end. And we want to go through, and just very briefly, very quickly now, just right at the last at the end. This is a very small section from the course that we wrote in the subject of investigating ufology for the 21st century. For the 21st century. In other words, all the relevant information, all the current software that could be used, all the technology which is good to use. Don't waste your time on other things that don't work. This is just a small section in that course. You want to know more about obtaining the course, then you can obviously see Steve Murillo, who can guide you through that process. We also have some flyers around. I think we've got some at the back of the room. And of course, we also have information upon the internet in regarding how to obtain the course in a printed version or in a digital version. And we just want to say thank you very much.